What up, guys? Welcome to this episode of Santa Cruz Medicinals Radio. Got my buddies here, Jacob and Ian. Guys, thank you for coming out. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, man. I'm super excited to dig into some good stuff here.
Absolutely stoked. I mean, let's just start right off the bat. So, why are you even here filming with me? Because your audience is giving you hate for filming with me. Some of them. My audience, some of them, give me hate for filming with you. So I think we should talk why do we even do this?
Yeah, I think for that we should kind of go back to where it started. Because initially, you had no idea who I was, and I had made videos on you. It was one of your videos just talking about seed oils in general and going to restaurants and getting seed oils and when they're good and when they're not good. And I sort of went through your claims and I talked about what I thought about the research, what you said, what I thought was true, what was not true. Then you saw that video, you made a little response, and I found that response very respectful. You said, Totally. Hey, we agree mostly on everything. We don't agree on everything entirely, though. But it was a very respectful encounter. And I was like, Absolutely. I love how this guy has a really big platform. And even though we have disagreements, even on some things that are kind of fundamental to what we both talk about, we can still have this discourse and talk in the DMs and make videos on each other. So I thought through that, there was just a lot of potential to reach more people
100%.
And focus on the things that we agree on, which are ultimately, I think we both agree and believe, are the biggest, most important things for health, which is not seed oils.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not even, in the top things you need to do for health. And we'll talk about those things today. I think for your audience, this is all stuff you know, but I want to clear up some stuff because I see a lot of people that don't really know my content sort of misinterpret stuff. Number one, I'm not animal-based or carnivore. From the beginning of my content, I've talked about eating more real food. I've always included veggies, potatoes, some legumes, some grains into my diet. I believe fiber is good, which we'll talk about. What else? I'm not you should eat all the saturated fat in the world kind of guy. I'm not, I love beef tallow. I love my grass-fed butter. I'm not eating spoonfuls of it. And one of these people that says you want to get your cholesterol very high. Oh, have high LDL. It's going to help your endocrine system.
That's the same as testosterone, dude.
Yeah. Your testosterone's going to be low if you're not doing spoonfuls of butter. So I'm not that guy. I feel like sometimes people might think of me as that because they'll put a lot of people in camps, right? They'll be like, Liver King, Carnivore MD, Brendan. And it's like, damn, my lifestyle's pretty different. My diet's pretty different than what they do. I'm a fan of eating a good ribeye. I'm definitely a fan of red meat and sort of some of the ancestral lifestyle type of stuff. But I just wanted to clarify that for some of your audience that might not know. These are things that you know, and I think this is why you're even sitting here today. You're like, a lot of this guy's opinions kind of do overlap with mine in terms of a lot of the stuff with diet, with some slight differences. And another thing for people is I'm willing to hear info and admit when I'm wrong. And we can talk about some of the stuff I've been wrong about, and I'm totally willing to change my ideas. I realize I have a big platform, and I never want to put stuff out to people that I feel like is unfair or not reasonable. So, we could start with one right now. Hot topic, raw milk. This is something that I feel like I was initially wrong about with the amount of lactase in raw milk. I'd seen some stuff that it contains a decent amount of lactase, which helps digest lactose. They make dairy, it's been made for a long time, with lactase in there to help people digest it. And I'm like, raw milk would be a good option for that. And it turns out I was wrong about that. It contains a very trace amount of lactase in there. It's negligible. So I basically changed my whole stance on raw milk, where I'm like, you know what? Pasteurized dairy is totally fine. It is the same nutrition as raw dairy. Raw dairy absolutely can have risks. It can create foodborne illness, whereas pasteurized dairy is extremely unlikely to create foodborne illness. And so now my stance on dairy overall is to get the highest quality dairy you can. Nothing wrong with pasteurized dairy. I like low temp pasteurized Alexander's. I drink that all the time. It's delicious. I still will drink some raw milk, but I don't want to be some advocate of you should get raw milk or you're making a mistake. So I think that's a good example of something that I've definitely looked at some info, heard some people, and been like, okay, I need to change my approach here.
One thing you've promoted in the past, and I'd like to ask now about, is raw honey. And I'm not saying that just because it's a joke that Cookie King and Luke Belmar have talked about, but because the pollen content being 0.4% and the availability of different enzymes being pretty minimal, do you feel that it is preferable in a way? I also think that potentially there's even maybe a risk or discussion around the fructose to sucrose galactose ratio in the way that the liver digests it and the likelihood of it being stored as fat as opposed to, other sugar sources. Do you think that raw honey is still preferable?
Well, I mean, like, I like honey in general, but I'm not having like large amounts of honey daily. And
you're not having the honey diet by Ray Peat?
I am not having the honey diet by Ray Peat. Definitely not doing that. I like it. I use it on yogurt bowls and stuff, but as far as like using it as a main source of carbohydrates, I would not do that.
Okay.
And like that's why I'm a huge fan of foods, like a bunch of different carbohydrate sources. I feel like my diet's pretty diverse in that way. So yeah, like while raw honey's become a meme, people definitely shouldn't be just like relying on it as a main source of carbs. But yeah, I think like, it's so funny how viral raw honey's gone.
Yeah.
And your honey doesn't have to be raw. I don't think that there's some insane benefits of raw honey versus honey that's exposed to heat. Yeah, but yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, why are you on the raw honey?
I have no issue with it at all. I just thought that since it was trending, it was worth bringing up.
Yeah. It is an interesting thing.
How do you raise your testosterone, man?
So while we're talking about raw stuff, I kind of want to cover what we were talking about just before going on here with the relative risks of raw versus pasteurized dairy or just raw things in general. And I like something that you said.
I'm not a raw meat guy, by the way. It's another thing I want to clarify.
No,
although I have taken some bites of some,
you're not
I'll order
enough.
the beef tartare. I'll eat a little bit of a raw ribeye. I'm not against it, but yeah, go ahead.
So I guess I kind of want to put out my beliefs about raw milk since you put out yours, and then we can talk about what you said.
Totally.
About risk and all that. So my two main things about raw milk are that it pretty clearly just has higher risk of getting you sick. And
I would
especially
definitely agree with that.
For vulnerable populations, it should be avoided, of course. Like that's, I think, a pretty common sense take.
I would say so, yeah. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. My wife and I were talking, we were drinking raw milk. We had it in our fridge, and she was like, well, when I have a baby or a toddler, I'm not going to be probably giving this to them. And I'm like, that's fair.
Yeah.
That makes sense to me. Yeah. And especially when there's good low temp pasteurized options out there, grass-fed dairy, high quality. So yeah, go ahead.
So there's that. And then the second thing is the cost of food is ultimately very important for most people who are going to be getting their information about health online. And raw milk is just so much more expensive. So even if you if you are willing to take that extra little bit of risk by getting raw milk, it's so much more expensive, like $7 for half gallon, $15 for a full gallon.
Totally.
When you could spend just a couple dollars at a grocery store for some normal pasteurized milk.
Absolutely.
That is just such a big limiting factor. And a big issue is that people are being convinced that raw milk is so much better for you that you have to make that sacrifice financially to get the best health results. And ultimately, that's something that I think should not be pushed. So again,
I
have a lot
agree.
of common ground.
I totally agree with that. And that's why I've really tried in my content lately to, when we're doing the grocery hauls and stuff, I'm just grabbing dairy. We've done low-cost grocery hauls at Walmart where I'm just grabbing some regular-ass milk. And I'm like, this is a great option. And this was what I was drinking in college when I was on a strict budget. And then, stuff like just pasteurized dairy, I've been trying to let people know that, like, you're going to get the exact same nutrition. You're going to get lower risk of getting sick, significantly lower risk of getting sick. And while you won't get the probiotics that raw milk might have, you can easily get those through Greek yogurt, through other fermented foods. So yeah, I think we agree there. And what we were saying in the kitchen is if they were to slap a warning label on raw dairy and say this food can cause foodborne illness, a higher risk of foodborne illness, and maybe you had to be 18 to buy it. And remember those alcoholic kombuchas back in the day? They're still around.
Oh, even now they have things. I don't know if you've seen this. These Happy Valley little blue bottles, and they have a variety of other different compounds that probably should be regulated, and they just have a warning. And they're probably far more dangerous and addicting than raw milk. So if they did,
raw milk, no.
You're addicted. I'm drinking it every day.
It's because the carbs, because they're so addictive.
Yeah, they are. Like, so if we did that and maybe required people to show an ID, 18 years old, maybe 20, like leave it up to the states to figure out, I think that would really just like solve this issue. And I think most people would agree on that. Where if you can go buy alcohol, I think you should be able to buy raw milk. We should have a little education that this can cause foodborne illness. And I do think creators pushing raw milk as this is the only option. If you're drinking pasteurized dairy, you're making a mistake. I think that is wrong. So I totally agree with you there.
Absolutely. You should not be cornered to feel like you have to buy this when in reality there's just not benefits, or at least enough benefits.
You're going to have some carnivores angry at you about B vitamins and like just typing up a paragraph right now.
Oh, yeah, the thiamine content.
Yeah.
But also, an interesting about the probiotics is this scientific snitch was talking with me about that. I don't know if you know her content.
Yeah,
but,
totally.
She's super in-depth on the research on raw milk, and she was talking to me about how raw milk cannot be labeled like actually be called a probiotic. Because even though it could have some of the bacteria that are beneficial, and a probiotic has to be beneficial to the host, anything that can potentially or does have pathogenic bacteria cannot be called a probiotic. So many raw milks can have, they can be very, very, very small amounts of pathogens, not enough to get you sick or even be noticeable. But if they have any amount at all, it can't be a probiotic. So legally, you can never say raw milk is a probiotic.
Gotcha.
But
yeah, that's interesting.
even if it does have some of those bacteria, because it also has some that aren't good for you, and it has to be completely net positive.
Totally.
So that was just a kind of an interesting distinction when people are like, this is my probiotic. It's like, not technically, because it can be a pathogenic as well.
Yeah, and a lot of people will throw a Raw Farm hate. They're one of the largest raw dairy distributors in the United States, and we did visit their farm. They have some pretty wild protocols there for cleanliness. They spend a lot of money on it. It's this whole system they have of getting the cows washing the underbellies, because that's where a lot of the contamination can occur. Going into the milking area, basically sanitizing them again, and then they milk them, and then they test their dairy. Now, look, I'm not here to. I don't promote. I'm not like, I don't work with Raw Farms. I've toured the farm. They're nice people. I have no like direct affiliation with them. They've had their issues. They've had batches before that have been recalled, and what I'm saying here is that is definitely a different place to get your raw dairy than meeting somebody in a Walmart to get raw dairy because you believe that if you're not drinking it, then you're making like a mistake for your health, or you're like the other way, you're going to get ill drinking pasteurized dairy. That's definitely not true. And that's risky. And I've had people before like come up at like meetups and stuff. Like, I got some raw dairy from like, my dad's farm. I don't drink that. No, like I don't know if this, how long has this been out here? Like, I don't know, the sourcing whatsoever. So I still sometimes will buy the raw dairy, and I think a lot of people wonder why. I enjoy the taste. I've been to the farm. They have really good farming practices. They help the land out there. And I also will buy pasteurized dairy. And for my audience, you're totally fine drinking pasteurized dairy.
I think that's really important, as that you kind of said, the purity spiral around it, where people go from this may have an advantage because of X, Y, and Z, like enzymes or slightly more nutrients or something, to this is the only thing you can do. This is what you have to do, and it turns into that for food as well. Oh, you don't actually need carbohydrates. Your body can just make it from proteins or fatty acids, and it's going to be extensive process. Or you shouldn't be cooking food at all because the cooking processes create volatiles, and these are going to totally for sure cause cancer, even though 98% of people eat cooked meat. That avenue leads people away from a lot of regular consensus. Even if they have some reasons to be critical, it's generally not beneficial for their health outcome. And I also think it leads them into a lot like worse in total like internet environment. So it's not just like the physical health because of their diet change, but also their mental health because of what they're exposed to online. And so does that sound getting in too deep with the like raw milk idea?
I think a lot of I think what you're saying like is like an important thing to say, which is, and this is why I've done so much content, like eating at fast food establishments. I did a video that is, I don't even know how many, 20 million views with FaZe Rug, where I went to all these fast food places with them, and I'm at certain places, I'm eating something there. I'm doing videos at In-N-Out. I'm doing videos at Chipotle. I'm doing videos eating food that I buy from Walmart. And the point there is my content isn't built for if you are in poverty, or if you don't have money, like my page is great for you. No, I mean, there's pages like BMW and Porsche for cars. People follow them, and they're selling a $200,000 car. Like, there's different things on social media. I do not think my page is the best for someone on an extreme budget to go to, but I do try to put out stuff like that to let people know you can be working towards your goals. Eating at a Chipotle, eating at In-N-Out, even options at, Popeyes. I ate some Popeyes. Like, you can find things there that I think are good for health and still have success. So like, I do think that is important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think, like you said, resources are a big part of everything. And back to what Ian said, mental health as well. That's kind of a big thing that I push, is like, I'm the food fear guy. Like, stop fearing stuff. The guy who says, you're killing us slowly, man. Like, it's creating so much fear around things that really are not causing any damage to you. And if they are, like, it's good to know about what damage is out there. But ultimately, most of the things that you're going to be able to buy in a grocery store like are not in themselves causing the damage. It's how you're using them, how much of them you're having, and what you're doing with the rest of your life. So ultimately, you shouldn't be afraid of how you eat. And if you are trying to get healthier, being scared and and feeling like you can't have all of these things is going to be worse for you mentally, and mental health is such a big part of health.
Totally.
So
It's funny that you bring up the fear thing, because here's another thing that they always talk about is that with germ theory, that they're saying that, well, you're afraid of something everywhere, and that doctors or allopathic medicine are there to sell you the cure. That you're afraid of raw milk or raw meat because there's an invisible enemy there. But these same people have that exact attitude towards things, which there are truly things in, cosmetics and in soaps and dish detergent and laundry detergent and whatnot. But there are things you can be critical of, but they're afraid of like everything when it comes to food, and even just end stage glycation byproducts from just eating any carbohydrate, let alone like processed carbohydrate. So they're afraid of not just like things that are justifiable, and then they push that fear, but then they use that fear in the same way to promote exactly why the opposition is wrong, and it's really contradictory.
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
totally.
Yeah, it's using a composition fallacy to push their beliefs and to diminish the beliefs of others, like saying, like you said, the glycation end products or seed oils and linoleic acid, like this is going to be the biggest issue because it's involved in an inflammatory pathway, or that the PAHs produced from cooking or whatever are the biggest issue, when in reality, it's like you got to look at everything that's happening in this entire giant system that is our lives, that is our human bodies, and it is our decisions. And you can't just blame these tiny little things for these issues that are not really even directly caused by them.
For sure. 100%. And I think now would be a fun time to get into seed oils. Yesterday or 2 days ago was so funny with Saladino. And it's crazy. People are, not a lot of people, but some people are throwing you hate for, the discussion with Saladino. It's really, well, I don't know, in person, it's not that deep. It's like, he threw out some studies that he's a fan of, some information that he's a fan of, and you were making your points about seed oils. I don't think it's that deep. I think Saladino obviously has a very strict stance against seed oils, which is not the same stance that I share. I still overall am anti-seed oil, and we'll get into why I choose to minimize them in my life. But he has a very strict stance, obviously. Like there's no seed oils running through that guy, I think. And
as far as we know.
That's why
he doesn't sunburn.
Yeah. Oh, you'll never sunburn in the, yeah. So talk to me about that interaction overall, because it was funny.
Yeah. So first I'll talk about why or how I even ended up there.
Yeah.
Because ultimately I didn't think I was going to be in town for that. I thought that was happening yesterday, and I thought I was just going to miss it. But then I saw you were going to be there. I was in Los Angeles. I was in a different part of town. I was across town.
Yeah.
And I was like, with a couple friends, and I was thinking, maybe we could make it to this. And
yeah,
my intentions were like, as I was falling asleep, I was thinking, here's some questions I can ask Paul. And I wanted to just be kind of fun.
Yeah.
And I had a list of questions. At first I wanted to ask him some like hypotheticals that are, would kind of challenge his beliefs. But I was like, I don't want to do that. That would be too intense. I want to just show up and have fun at this event. So my two questions that I asked him were, seed oils or not, what are the biggest things people need to be doing for their health? Because ultimately I wanted to find some common ground. Like,
totally.
What do we agree on?
And this is the other thing I sometimes see in the comments. People hating on us finding common ground, or him trying to find common ground with Paul Saladino. That is wrong. You guys are wrong in your idea of you should not associate with me whatsoever. We shouldn't talk. You shouldn't even be around me. Oh, you shouldn't even be around Paul. You shouldn't even be talking to him. You're platforming him. No, Paul already has a huge platform. I have a huge platform. You're building a huge platform very fast. The overall goal that we all share in our different ways is to get people healthier. I would think Jacob would agree a bit more with what I do in terms of that than versus Paul, but we aren't going to make any change whatsoever existing in echo chambers. If I only talk to an audience that agrees with everything I say, then we're not going to make any change whatsoever. That's bad for human development and getting ideas out there. It's the same reason, guys, I film with streamers, and I film with Cookie King, I film with Neon, I film with Oblivion. Why? To reach more people. How am I ever going to reach somebody that's just watching an Oblivion stream if now they see me on the Oblivion stream and I'm telling them, hey, you need to eat real food. You shouldn't do this. You should be working out more. You shouldn't be on your phone all day. Whatever it is. And then that might inspire some people. It does. And we see these people come up at the meetups. You saw that. Hundreds of people coming up saying, you helped me get healthy. You helped me start working out. We're both into jiu-jitsu. So many people have gotten into jiu-jitsu somehow, like just showing how fun it is. All that stuff is why you are down to have those discussions and film people. So for anybody saying that, I just want to say I think that's fundamentally wrong. From like your intense knowledge of politics, how bad echo chambers can be,
yeah.
what it can lead to, and like we need to fight back against it.
One of the few videos I did on YouTube, even though I'm not like a big YouTube guy, is the epistemic divorce, and that people create their echo chambers, and the algorithms are creating this because they want you to retain on the platform. And so of course they're going to engage with only the people who say what they want to hear. And then they're never actually, one, there is a fault, and we've discussed this while we were walking on the beach, that people will, like, even creators have this as an issue, that they don't present arguments in a way that's appealing to the opposition, and they are usually condescending and rude. And I understand that because the motivations, the subtext is that people are at like an opposition, and then like they likely interact with these people and they're not very kind to each other. But if you're not appealing, and if you don't like, then you're not getting your message across. If you truly cared about what you were saying and you're doing it out of love and motivation to actually help people, which is what I really respect about your message, then you don't be trying to, one, you'd be open to some discussion, but also two, you'd like be trying your hardest to help them. You're not, because if I want to talk to people about something I believe politically, I'm not just gonna be like fuck you, I hate you.
100%. No, 100%. And this is the whole thing with people giving you any type of shade. If you hit me up and you're like, hey, I want to do some content with you, I want to scream at you about why I think seed oils are good for an hour. No thanks.
Yeah.
Peace. Like, if you hit me up and you're like, hey, I want to hang out, want to have a discussion, want to make some recipes that we agree with, want to, like, cool. Like, I'm not just going to film with somebody who wants to yell at me about seed oils, which Saladino did yell at you about seed oils. So get back to that. I'm sorry for the tangent, but yeah.
No, that's all right. That was a good tangent. It was important. So that was my first question. My second question was, I honestly didn't know how strong his stance on seed oils was, because I didn't know if he, like you, maybe is more against using them for deep fried foods because we know they produce more harmful compounds. And so I asked him, is there any case where using seed oils where there's net positive based on his beliefs? I didn't know if he would say, maybe if it's cold pressed and you use it like this, it would be good for you. I wanted
patient with very high LDL, concerning high levels of LDL, whatever. Yeah.
Swapping saturated fats for them in certain cases. I was curious what he would say on that. And no, he said it's engine lubricant only. And then at that point I was like, all right, that's all I had to ask you. Thank you. And then you came in.
Hey.
And I was like, oh, you like popped over and
I saw this going down. I'm like, ooh, I got to pop in here.
So I was about to end it, and then you're like, Jacob Saladino collab.
Yeah. I said, Jacob does love seed oils. He's a good guy. He's helping people get healthy. And yeah, you could see Paul.
I think at first he thought you were joking. Yeah. He's like, oh, you love seed oils? And
his expression just changed.
I was like, it's nuance. And he's like,
yeah, he
got a little
ready
serious.
To rock. Yeah.
And then so that turned into him saying, you can't defend seed oils. Here's all these reasons why. And honestly, I didn't do a good job defending my stance because it was stressful. I've never done a debate in public, especially not in front of multiple cameramen with a guy who has several million followers. Totally. So I'm
guys,
not
he didn't come there to like literally. This is how deep it was, guys. Yo, I'm in LA. Like, can I cruise by the tallow thing? It would be fun to kick it. Yeah, sure. It's not like you were like, yeah, like that's the background of that.
Yeah. Ultimately, I wanted the interaction to just be like, hey, look, I got Paul Saladino on camera.
Yeah.
Hey, look, I met Brendan. Like that was ultimately it. I thought it'd be kind of funny because I had my microphones if I could record something. But then, it turned into him defending his stance on seed oils, and like that was exactly what I didn't want to happen because that wasn't my intent. I'm trying not to talk about seed oils anymore.
Hey, I mean, love or hate the guy, I do like Saladino. He's passionate and he is like an encyclopedia. Like he really is, and like I'm sure people will break down a lot of the studies that he was citing and show, there are differences in there, difference of opinion, or how he comes to these conclusions for sure. But you do have to say the guy is ready to rock with his ideas. If his ideas are right or wrong, obviously you'd trend that they're wrong. I'd probably be somewhere in the middle. I would definitely say they're wrong about plant defense chemicals, and we can get into that. But he is ready to rock. You got to respect that. You're like, okay, he's knowledgeable. You might disagree with his knowledge, but he is knowledgeable.
I think that was in response to him getting railroaded that one time, like, in 2017 on TV. On TV. And he's not going to have that happen again. He's fully ready to present an argument.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And ultimately, I didn't want to come up and do a debate with a guy who debates.
Totally.
Like, his whole thing is debating seed oils. And whether he's right or wrong, if he's a better debater, he's going to look like he's right. And I'm not a debater. And that, that might make me look bad and might make people think that I don't know what I'm talking about.
But these things on social media, you might be a little newer to social media than I am. The comment section is sometimes a good place. People like, never look at comments. I look at comments. I read my comments. Some voices get really loud. Like, you have the same guy commenting hate to you. I was like looking right before us. I'm like, what's going on? It's like some same guy just like, it's like, dude, it's not that deep.
Yeah, like hundreds of comments from the same people.
Yeah.
It's like, dude, how?
Yeah.
Like, how do you spend so much time on this?
They just get super opinionated, and I do, a bot maybe. I do appreciate with like what you're doing is like finding the common ground is important, and people just don't want to accept the fact, especially with me, where there is some gray area with me with these controversial topics like artificial sweeteners, like seed oils. There is gray area with that, and I think why I cause such a rift in the science-based community and why people are confused on why does the Plant Slant have me on his podcast? Why does Rob LaFamme have me on his show? Why are you here right now? Is because people that genuinely follow my content realize that I am actually sometimes fighting against the same battles that they're fighting against. Plant defense chemicals being one of those. But I would like to touch more on seed oil, a little bit more on seed oils.
Okay.
You said in a video, two things. One, as content creators, we all know this. We have to cast wide nets with content. So some of your stuff where you're like filming your face and there's text over it and it's a funny thing about seed oils, that I know that is your actual takes on seed oils are way more nuanced and way more in depth than obviously you're going to show in a little video like that. Mm-hmm. I think you do what I do, where like, when I'm paying somebody $100 to not eat McDonald's, and someone will comment, "Hey man, I'm a bodybuilder, I'm an athlete, I eat McDonald's once every 3 weeks." Like, is it total? That's not, you have to cast some wide nets with content to make any success on any platform and enact the change that we want to make. You want to make people healthy. I want to make people healthy. So I'm just quickly defending, I guess, your content that is very pro seed oil, where you make those videos, because in my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but you're like, this is funny. It's not that deep. And it's to cast a wide net to start a conversation about something that you believe in.
Absolutely. Yeah. That content, I view it kind of as like a funnel where ultimately you cannot provide any sort of nuance of discussion in a 6-second video with 2 sentences on screen. Yeah. So people see that it drums up a lot of conversation and engagement, and it gets people talking about it and sharing it. Mm-hmm. And ultimately the goal is to move them down the funnel into the more beneficial, nuanced conversation and get them interested, because they might see something that they've never heard before that's interesting in one of these really short videos, read the comments and see that all these people are divisive. They can't agree on anything and they want to learn more. Yeah. And then they go to your page and they see, maybe there's a deep dive on the research or just an educational video or some sort of lifestyle video that they are now interested in because of this. And 100%. It moves them down the funnel to get to the more valuable information, which ultimately is not the purpose of those short videos. Yeah. It's joking about, do you think like seed oils are bad because they're in a burger? Well, there's also lettuce in a burger. It's like, obviously that's not like my intellectual stance, but it's funny enough to get people thinking like, oh, well, maybe, just because it's there, it's not actually, they're not bad because of the seed oils. Maybe there's more going on there. Yeah.
You're casting a net, and you're also not lying in that content. It does get down to what you do believe, which is seed oils are a net positive for human health, and you do consume them and you don't have issues with them being in foods, being in people's diets. So like when I make one about like red meat or steak, like, yeah, I believe red meat can be an amazing part of your diet. I'm a big fan of it. I eat it. So it's not a lie, but if somebody just views that type of content, they might think, oh my God, this guy's a carnivore. Oh my God, this guy's guzzling seed oils. Like,
yeah, people.
When one of your main points was literally that you don't use it.
So I was gonna get into that. So then you did a video where everybody goes, controversial on you, where you're like, I don't really use seed oils. Like you are a bigger fan of olive oil and avocado oil. Mm-hmm. Can we get into that? Just elaborate on that, I guess.
Yeah. So in general, especially the time when I made that video, it's like, I don't know. I cook with olive oil for low heat and I cook with avocado oil for high heat because they're just good oils. Olive oil, I think, is just the best oil ever that you can use.
I agree with that.
Like, especially because when I was in grad school, I had a researcher come and give us a presentation talking about his research on olive oil and heart failure and how just essentially there are so many benefits for heart health when it comes to consuming olive oil, and the more the better. And if you want to talk about Mediterranean diet or blue zones or whatever, but it's a good oil. So I'm like, I want to use that as much as I can for as many uses as I can, but also, cooking some things, it has a flavor, and sometimes I don't want that flavor. So I can use something like avocado oil, has a higher smoke point, and it's not super, like, it doesn't have a strong taste. And it's also higher in antioxidants or anti-inflammatory chemicals. And I can use that. But ultimately now I have spray canola oil. I was on a diet for the last month or two before coming here. So I was just trying to use less oil. Yeah. So I'm like, I'll use a spray canola oil. And I don't have anything against any of those oils. It's like saying that because blueberries have more antioxidants than strawberries, that you should never eat strawberries. It's like, well, they both have antioxidants. One might have a little bit more, but they serve different purposes. Like, I might want to make a smoothie with blueberries and not strawberries, or with strawberries and not blueberries. Yeah. Now, ultimately, they're both good for you. And people make the argument that, well, you like olive oil more than you like canola oil, so therefore canola oil must be bad for you. It's It's like, no,
Yeah.
I don't use it for everything.
Yeah.
I diversify my portfolio with oils, and I use them for what they're best at.
Yeah.
And I avoid things that I probably shouldn't be having a lot of. It's the same reason we don't have trans fats, and why no one says, oh, you can have them in moderation. Like, we know they're actually bad for you.
Yeah.
And you don't want to have any of them.
Totally.
And with things like butter, you said you respected that. I said I use butter, and I do use butter because ultimately, again, it comes down to the bigger picture of me having a couple tablespoons of butter per day, whether I'm putting it on toast or cooking with it, is not going to be the end all be all for my heart health.
Totally.
There are so many other factors that influence your health. And, while we don't want you eating a ton of saturated fat, you also have to think, who am I as a person? What is my lifestyle? What am I doing? Can I get away with this?
Absolutely.
And it's like someone like us we're all three of us. We're very active people. We're moving around. We're doing as much as we can to stay healthy. We can get away with some butter if we like the taste. If it is more palatable for us, if it makes our dishes better, there's no problems with that. It's just the problem is when people start saying, "Oh, you should be having sticks of butter."
Yeah,
it's like even if you're healthy, you probably don't want to be doing that.
And I just, a lot of my background comes from, I got my degree in anthropology, and you take a lot of these medical anthropology classes, and it's basically one of the reasons why I never actually have believed in this eating tons of saturated fat every day, sticks of butter. It's not anthropologically consistent whatsoever. And a lot of people in my community get to this idea of ancestral eating and everything, and I think oftentimes they miss out on what ancestral eating really is and how we evolved. And it's not like we were just feasting on steaks and butter and all this stuff. It's like
that we somehow also had, we had the facilities to make butter like 200,000 years ago, and then they never foraged for nuts or tubers or anything else.
Yeah, they were just hunters, not gatherers.
Yeah, and like the amount of fiber a lot of these hunter-gatherer societies use, like there's great PubMed papers on this, like where an anthropologist will actually go there and really analyze the diet, and it's a pretty fair amount of fiber. And I then, the gray area of this, I do agree with Saladino when he's like, hey, they would prioritize, oftentimes the meat, the organs. Yeah, he's right in that. They would prioritize that. That's definitely factual. And you get to like some of the first cave drawings we know of ever of like animals being butchered. So like, I guess like going against like the vegan thing, which you're definitely not a vegan, no one here is, but like, when they're like, oh, we should never eat meat. It's like, that's a very hard thing for me to hear because it's like, we've always eaten it. It's been extremely important in our development, in our diet, but also so has fiber. So have, and it's like, yeah, it just like gets into an interesting point.
With the anthropology, there's this huge thing that raw carnivores especially use to reference the Maasai and also the Inuit to say that these are actually reflective of their specific ancestry, even though they're clearly not. These are like European peoples referencing, again, Inuit tribes eating like whale blubber or narwhal or drinking blood and drinking a diet of only cow's blood. And, I think that's really silly. And these same people also are usually making the arguments that you, again, to an absolute extreme, like you have to eat raw meat, and they think that, well, humans didn't have cooking facilities, so there was no way for them to possibly ever cook food, and that's another absurd thing.
Yeah, they should read the book Fire by Richard Wrangham. Really interesting thing of like when humans started to cook food and use fire and domesticate fire. Basically, it's pretty fascinating. Back to the seed oil thing. So overall, what I would agree on, and you can correct me if I'm wrong or if there's any more here, but like I would totally agree that in so many studies, seed oils appear to lower LDL. They also don't appear to cause some massive rise in inflammation. I think this is wrong. This is not, it's just not truthful for people to say that. It's not supported by the research. I sent you a paper that was new from 2025 because you're interested in this stuff, and it showed a minor rise in interleukin 6, which isn't, it's just stuff like that I think will be clammed onto by the anti-seed oil community and like, look, it causes inflammation. When inflammation is way more complex than that, and a slight rise in interleukin 6 compared to coconut oil in short term, the study was very short term, does not mean that you're going to be so inflamed and sick if you eat a meal with canola oil. And also, that said, having too much saturated fat, saturated fat does raise LDL, and there are concerns about elevated LDL being associated with heart disease, where I think you would agree, and it gets a little interesting, and there's really intelligent people, far more intelligent than us, definitely more intelligent than me, having debates about this right now, where we're trying to get to the bottom of heart disease. Because I would say, while we firmly know that high LDL is associated with heart disease, we also clearly can't say high LDL equals heart disease. There's people that go their whole lives with high LDL. They never get a heart attack. There's people that get heart attacks that have low LDL. But what I just said before is true. High LDL associated with heart disease, which is why if you go to your doctor and you're eating, tablespoons of coconut oil, tablespoons of beef tallow every single day, and you're not having fiber, you're not exercising, and your LDL gets very high, they're going to say this is a concern. And that I think they are right in saying that. That said, there's just more stuff coming out where cardiologists are trying to complete the picture of heart disease to save people's lives. Mm-hmm. So elevated HbA1c in this study there was a pretty firm association with long-term elevated HbA1c and heart attacks. So there's not some conspiracy against people, against like saturated fat or LDL or statins. I don't think there's a evil conspiracy there. And I think it's really important to say, coming from me and the oftentimes the type of people that follow me. That's not going on. There's not some evil conspiracy to try to get you to eat seed oils or not eat butter. This is just the data on a large scale that they're seeing, and they're trying to help people because heart disease kills a lot of people. Mm-hmm. My thought, and this is totally, unproven because I think we'll see, is I do think in 10 to 15 years, there's going to be a different recommendation for heart disease, which is, hey, high LDL definitely it's still going to be associated with heart disease. I don't think that's ever going to go away, right? But I think they're going to maybe have a more thorough approach of getting people's biomarkers of, hey, elevated HbA1c, this is what we know about triglycerides, this is what we know about inflammatory biomarkers, this is what we know about VO2 max. That was a really interesting study with VO2 max and heart disease, and LDL, and oxidized LDL, and all these things and I would hope they would have a bigger picture of it. Mm-hmm. Random rant, but what do you think about that?
So I think, well, first, there's a few things I want to talk about with heart disease. Ultimately, heart disease comes about because of plaque development in the arteries, and there cannot be plaque development if there isn't LDL in the blood excess LDL that can be attached to these arteries. But also, other things have to happen to allow for that LDL to be built up.
Absolutely.
And ultimately, you have to have a damaged endothelial lining, the lining of the actual blood vessels themselves. Mm-hmm. So when we look at heart disease and we look at what causes it, we have several different known risk factors, and only one of those is elevated blood lipids, so elevated LDL. If you're a smoker, if you're hypertensive or have high blood pressure, if you're obese, and if you have genetics that predispose you to it, all of those things are going to develop or cause you to be at higher risk for developing heart disease because they're going to cause more inflammation in your body. So the higher the inflammation, the more likely you are to damage your cell or the linings of your blood vessels, the more likely you are to have that develop, the plaques develop, and then ultimately develop heart disease.
And this is where people say seed oils cause inflammation, thus you should avoid them. And you are saying, and I'm agreeing with you, research isn't quite there.
Yeah.
Guys, in a way, I'm anti-seed oil. I would love if there were some studies just showing, hey, we compare seed oils with saturated fats and we see massive inflammatory biomarkers go up with seed oils. It's just not the case.
You don't see that.
You don't see that.
What you do see is, and these are some studies that I also sent you, and I talked about quickly in the Saladino thing, was there are a lot of meta-analyses and reviews that look at just everything that we have. And Paul says you should throw away meta-analyses because garbage in, garbage out, whatever. I understand why he says that, but also you can go and read every single study that's in these analyses, and you can read why they chose the ones they did and they didn't. You can read the methodologies. But ultimately, when they look at how does inflammation change when you control for a healthy diet with people who are eating seed oils or not eating seed oils, or linoleic acid or not linoleic acid, or unsaturated versus saturated fats, the inflammation is either net neutral or slightly beneficial when you look at the overall picture. So you might see, like you said, interleukin 6, which is a inflammatory cytokine. The more you have is usually associated with more inflammation. It might be a little bit higher, but not significantly. So a very small amount. Or C-reactive protein, CRP, is another one of those. It might be slightly elevated, but not to a point where it's going to cause any problems. And you might see in other inflammatory markers that it goes down. Yeah. So when you look at the overall picture, if you're to draw a mean between everything, there's just no change.
Totally. It just doesn't appear to be some like you said earlier, smoking and obesity. This is something that isn't debated by anyone. This isn't debated by, well, maybe there might be some fringe people, but no one is debating those things. You're a cigarette smoker, you're obese for a long period of time, your risk of heart disease and just overall illness is going to skyrocket. Mm-hmm. There's nobody that debates that.
That's why it's so important.
We should focus on that, but yeah.
That's why your message, and even in a way, Saladino's kind of holistic approach to wellness being not just on nutrition, it's so important to focus on exercise and other things for regulating inflammation, that the discussions around inflammation only focus on nutrition and potential interventions. Yeah, the interleukin whatever, a tumor necrosis factor, beta, interleukin 6, and whatnot. But and the fear mongering of cortisol. Additionally, relating those also somehow to like whatever chronic stress disorders, saying that like this is like a 1-to-1 thing, and then the discussions about cardiac death. I think that they're really simplifying that, because not every cardiac death is a progression of heart disease, nor is it even caused by an infarct. And I think that including all of those, because they are a primary, median by which people pass away in Europe and America, they're really simplifying a perspective just to draw like one single narrative. And the message has never been entirely that like, or it shouldn't be, I guess, among people who are promoting nutrition and exercise content. It shouldn't be that it's like there's just one single thing that you need to do to focus on your health. Like clearly there's a broad picture that nutrition is impacting your health, but clearly there are other changes you can make in your lifestyle that would yield these amazing benefits, and also helping with the mental health aspect as well, not just like regulating your body image, because even just being active and then having community from that physical exercise by being involved in jiu-jitsu or surfing like you are, or as you promote as well, that those two things would probably be amazing for the relief and regulation of inflammation, because cortisol plays such an important role in not just the increase in inflammation, but also the management and reduction of inflammation long term.
Oh, absolutely. And I think like this is, I think, what we're going to be able to get to today, which I think is going to be super beneficial today, is basically sort of like a conclusion from both of us on seed oils, which I think people will find is way more of like just like a balanced conclusion and not that deep than people think. Overall, I would say we both agree olive oil is a tremendous fat. Avocado oil is a tremendous fat. Saturated fats in small amounts, I think, is what you would say. I might be a little more moderate on the saturated fats. I might use a little bit more. I'm very active. I'm cranking through calories. In my recipes now, I try to say like, hey, if you're cutting, like, just omit the butter here. It's going to be extremely calorically dense. I think we would both agree that, like you just said about the inflammatory aspects of seed oils, and summarizing all those studies, if you really look at them, there just isn't the research there to say if you have some canola oil or soybean oil in your diet, you are going to be massively inflamed and just you're cooked. That's just not true. Okay. So like you were just saying, there's things that people aren't focusing on that are known and are way bigger things, like sleep and exercise and just not being overweight should be way more focused on than seed oils. My reason for avoiding seed oils when I can, when I go out to eat, we'll go out to eat, I'm sure I am not bringing a jar of beef tallow. Okay.
Thank goodness.
And I'm not, even unless the restaurant is, like maybe at a steakhouse, say, oh, can you cook it in butter? Or like at a breakfast place, like it's pretty normal to, hey, I'm going to order some eggs. Can you cook them in butter? Very normal thing to do. 99% of the time, I'm not going to a restaurant asking them to not use seed oils, or do they use seed oils. I'm a fan of restaurants not using seed oils, and I'll get into why, but I am not somebody who thinks ingesting a small amount of seed oils is going to derail my health goals whatsoever. Personally, anecdotally, and I think it's important to listen to people when they say, hey, when I cut out seed oils or I eat a lot of seed oils, I don't feel good. Okay, then look for other oils. Look for, if you feel great eating olive oil or avocado oil, great, go for it. One of the reasons why I am a fan of restaurants maybe opting for beef tallow in the fryers and stuff like this, we looked at that study comparing the frying performance of canola versus rice bran versus beef tallow, and we did notice more benzoate in the canola and the rice bran versus the beef tallow. So I thought that was interesting. Benzoate associated with cancer, stuff like this. So that's why it's just not that big of a deal. So it's so funny to talk about, but it's like, yeah, like if a restaurant's cooking some French fries and beef tallow, I'm a fan of it versus canola oil. But yeah, I'm not at restaurants telling them, bring in my jar of beef tallow.
So one point, and this is a point I made in the video on that study that was interesting, and it was kind of something I read through the study and then I realized at the end, because I've worked in restaurants quite a bit before, and restaurants aren't frying foods in rice bran oil, and usually not canola oil.
Yeah.
So
I mean, usually it's soybean oil.
Yeah, soybean oil or like a
very common,
like a shortening, soybean oil shortening.
Yeah.
So that was just one thing that was kind of interesting. I haven't seen a study that compares those like tallow to soybean oil shortening. But one other point that I have is, yes, it likely produces less of those harmful, potentially carcinogenic compounds when you fry in a saturated fat, because we know that they're just more stable at high temperatures.
Totally.
But then also that kind of shifts like, okay, we can agree on that. So now what else is relevant here?
Mm-hmm.
And it's just general health effects of swapping an unsaturated fat for a saturated fat.
Mm-hmm.
Like we know you probably don't want to have a ton of carcinogenic compounds in your food, but then what are the effects of swapping from unsaturated to saturated,
Totally.
especially for the type of audience of people who are eating in fast food restaurants already.
Mm-hmm.
These are the people who likely have those other risk factors for developing conditions that are potentially going to give them harm later in life.
Sure.
So one of the reasons I'm kind of against swapping for tallow is, all right, great, you might be getting rid of some of like the PAHs and the BAP or whatever that's being developed from these high heats, but now you're having people who already are likely majority unhealthy eating more saturated fat.
It's totally a valid point. I think a very valid point, and you've made videos about, a lot of people have, of fast food places switching to beef tallow, and now it's suddenly healthy. I think we would both agree that, like you went to my restaurant Tallow, and it's like when you're eating a bowl of rice, veggies, some protein, some dairy in there, some onions, stuff like that, and yeah, it's cooked in beef tallow. That's a far different ballgame than here's a burger and fries and a milkshake, but there's beef tallow in all of it.
Yeah.
So it's like, I do definitely agree with you there. And it's like, yeah, like a small reduction in benzoate in that meal versus if it was cooked in canola oil. We're getting into it's like a very weird take. Like, hey, I'm going to eat this milkshake double thing, but it's cooked in beef tallow. So it's good.
I love this message though. We talked about this yesterday, that people would hyperfocus, and that's always the issue with like people on /fit or Kiwi Farms or some of the orgs where they're discussing this hyper specific thing is actually the cause of all of your health issues. Mm-hmm. And like it's like, again, with having more of a holistic view. So when you're discussing this, like whether it's fried in this oil versus the tallow, yeah, will it be any healthier if the implication is that you are habitually consuming fast food? Is the fast food going to be better if you're over consuming calories? I made this video, not just about fast food, but also about things available in U.S. grocery markets that, American food isn't poisoned. I know, what a crazy take. There are things that are in American food goods and cosmetics that are banned in Europe, and I know the Plant Slant will hit this point home a bunch of times that like we also ban some of their coating system colorings as well. Mm-hmm. Just because those things are there doesn't mean that you're not made aware of them, or that's the specific thing causing your health issues. And that if more people just simply focused on actually tracking their calories, and then, as you said, the sleep and exercise, which is, if you're so concerned about inflammation, those are your two primary vectors for mediation. Wouldn't you then primarily change those, mm-hmm. along with then tracking your food? Like you could, not that you should, eat fast food and still lose weight.
Totally.
Will changing it out again and then not even having any insight into your total calories, will changing the oil out make it any better for you? Yeah.
No, and this, okay, I think it's really important for me to sort of call out my community with this. We will hate on Big Pharma for doing the pill for every ill. Like, they just want to push you a simple solution, is what my community will say. And I agree with a lot of that. There's issues with overprescription of medication, stuff like this. The same thing sort of goes for pushing, it's just a seed oil. That's your problem. They're pushing you seed oils. That's the issue. It doesn't really appear like that. It's not the main thing. So overall, man, I think like, it's funny. We have a lot of overlap on the seed oil thing. Mm-hmm. I still am a fan of using olive oil, just like you. And it's like, okay, so why do we like using olive oil? A bit more antioxidants. There's a really interesting thing I didn't get a chance to send you, but there was a study showing some residual solvents in some of these cooking oils. They're below the threshold of what's considered safe, but obviously solvent extracted oils can have some residual hexane, some residual pentanes, because they solvent extract the seeds to make these oils. We're getting into very minor things for health, and this is below the level set by the FDA, or it's fine. They deem it safe. But my brain just goes, if I could just use the cold pressed olive oil, versus seed oils. Why I don't have seed oils in my house. All that said, going out to a restaurant, I think totally fine to, eat some seed oils. And another thing I guess I want to say to people is if you have a product you love, let's say somebody has a protein bar they love, and it's the best protein bar ever, and they find it has a little bit of canola oil in there. I do not think they should be throwing that away. I'm not going to buy it. I'm not going to say, oh, this is the best protein bar in the world. But stuff like that, I do think I want people to take seed oils. If seed oils are right here, and what they're looking at for health, I want them to throw it down here. Mm-hmm. And I think we would kind of both agree with that.
Yeah, I think I wouldn't agree that I would choose something other than that protein bar. When I first started studying nutrition, like as I was going into school for it, I was that way where I would like, if something was in the house with canola oil, I'd throw it away. If my brother came and cooked, because he's an amazing cook, he's a chef. If he came and cooked some potatoes and canola oil, I was like, I can't eat that. But now it's like, dude, I don't really care. Like,
yeah, no, I think it's, I totally agree. And it's like, I think it's a dangerous place to get in when you're too rigid with your diet. I think, okay, here's something I think you should really hear is that for so many people, they are going from this spot of having gut dysbiosis, autoimmune issues, all these issues, right? And maybe they're eating a standard American diet while they're having these things, right? They see somebody like Saladino, they see his content, and they go all in on animal-based. Or maybe they see a carnivore creator, and they go all in on carnivore. They experience sometimes amazing results that sometimes Western medicine has failed them in this regard, where they go to their doctor, they say, I'm having eczema, I'm having acne, it's ruining my life like this. And maybe Western medicine doesn't get them the solution. They then see somebody like a Saladino or whatever, and they start to go on that type of diet. It does create some fanaticism of like, they're like, this did cure my eczema or acne or whatever it is. Now, I think the end goal there should be to get back to having a somewhat normal, diverse diet. And when we talk to these functional medicine doctors that are in here, they actually would probably agree with more of what you're saying with a diet, recommendations for a diet. And they're not fans of long-term carnivore whatsoever. They're not fans of long-term animal-based. But they both were basically saying, hey, for some people, they can have such gut dysbiosis, autoimmune issues that going on a somewhat restricted diet for a few weeks will cause these benefits. Then they should start to reintegrate foods. I think for your community, it's important to understand that that is where a lot of this like fanaticism comes about. People are solving their own health issues through doing a diet that they might have been told is like not good. And then sometimes the negative part is it sort of locks them in that camp and they don't get back to having a diverse diet. There's even studies on fiber when they gave people that had some gut dysbiosis fiber, it caused some indigestion, some issues. When they gave people with a healthy gut microbiome fiber, it fed good bacteria in the gut, which is what fiber does. Why I love fiber. I have a good gut microbiome. It feeds more of it, right? And it's anti-colon cancer. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
So, yeah, another ramble by me. But what do you think about that?
So I think the phrase that always pops in my mind when talking about this type of thing is the more you understand mankind, the less you understand man. So these general recommendations, the fact that they are general means that they don't work 100% for every single person because not every person, we are all completely different people. We have different gut microbiomes, we have different parents, we have different genetics, and our bodies respond to things differently. There's people who are allergic to peanuts, doesn't mean that other people shouldn't eat peanuts.
Totally.
And so for some people who might have these sort of idiopathic or unexplained issues, going on a diet like the Saladino carnivore style diet is going to fix that because they are sensitive to things that most people aren't sensitive to. And ultimately, someone like Paul Saladino is basically just on the super prolonged elimination diet where he eliminated everything except for what he could tolerate. And then now over time, he's maybe seen some health conditions, health issues that have developed from this, and he started reintroducing things. And most people do that just sort of on a shorter time span to see, like, okay, I've gotten rid of everything that could be causing a problem. What can I now reintroduce that isn't causing a problem? And usually that just helps you realize maybe it's this one or these two things. And if that is a seed oil, you might just have a sensitivity to it. Or if it could have been some other thing that just happened to be feeding some bad strain of bacteria in your gut. And that is something that needs to be figured out on the personal level in a systemized or standardized way that will help you figure out what is best for you.
For sure.
And so the carnivore diet, I think its merit is that if you have these weird issues with food that are causing these weird problems, cutting out everything that could be causing a problem is of course more likely to fix it than just continuing on with a Western diet.
Yeah, totally.
But ultimately, I don't see carnivore ever being a long-term sustainable diet for literally anyone unless they are allergic to everything except for meat and eggs and maybe dairy.
I agree with that.
You talked about this elimination, and you also talked about the cost effectiveness. So you're talking about people espousing fanaticism, being very devoted to something, and that is true, absolutely. But that elimination doesn't just extend to nutrition, and it is good to understand what's in your laundry detergent, what's in your dish soap, what's in your body soap. You know, people change out their shower curtains, and then they start getting into literally everything. And I do think you should be maybe opposed to polyester clothing, and for reasons beyond just maybe your physical health, but it's not just like the dietary aspects. And then people will, start putting everything in their life. I think it causes some forms of neuroticism in a way. Then it may cause them also to adopt certain unhealthy attitudes, not just towards food, but also towards, their engagement with other people in their diets, and then their body image as well. And it can be taken to an extreme where I've seen a few people that, they did transform completely and they lost a lot of weight, but then they lose so much weight. They go from being like 340 pounds and they got onto like a pure raw carnivore diet, and they eliminated everything. They're getting rid of all these things. And then they're also spending money and getting duped into buying things like, depending on your opinion on certain red light therapies, I do think red light can be beneficial, but they can be also expensive and maybe not give you the benefits you're particularly looking for, like hair growth or something. They lost all this weight. They're starting to think that, okay, I'm getting super into health. And then they're like, basically starving themselves to the point where they're like 140 pounds, it's like 6'5", or 130 pounds, 6'5", and then they're spending extreme amounts of money on like alternative and new things, where like different EMF blocking things that people are marketing, or the red light things that people are marketing, or different grounding devices to ground their whole bed and whole house, and also like spike mats for certain, I don't know. So, and they'll pay coaches as well to guide them through. This is another thing that's huge within the wellness community. Mm-hmm. You guys talked even before we started about how this is a $1 billion industry. And then people will obviously point out that big pharma, makes all this money, but big wellness additionally will sell you different things that may or may not work. And they'll also sell coaching. Out of charlatans will give you coaching and discussions, and they're not really probably delivering for the value that some people may be spending thousands of dollars on discussions and coaching for, a result that's almost nothing. And I think, again, so it comes first from that like idea that, well, there might be hexane, they might be like pentane in a little bit of this, seed oil. This may cause some inflammation. Well, what else in my life? And they start looking at literally everything.
Yeah, that's true.
And it can cause some issues. It is good. I absolutely agree with your messaging on like not using plastic and avoiding the polyester clothing, but it can lead them, some people, to unhealthy places with their body, mind, and even expending a lot of money on things that are a huge waste.
For sure. Yeah, I would completely agree with that. So I try to wear a polyester rash guard sometimes. People go, "You're wearing polyester?" I go, "Yeah."
Yeah, it makes me look good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. The next thing I want to get into is fiber. Mm-hmm. So this is something that we agree on. And it's something that I sometimes, oddly enough, get some hate from the animal-based community on.
Bro, you can't digest it, dude.
I know, you can't digest it.
How can it be good for you?
How can it be good?
Dude, your body can't even digest it, dude.
Dude, those hunter-gatherer societies they had it all wrong.
Yeah.
Eating their fiber, seeking it out. So we'll sort of loop into things here, which is fiber and plant defense chemicals. Mm-hmm. So why I have always had veggies, some grains I do better with than others, but some grains, legumes, potatoes in my diet is because I think what Saladino says about plant defense chemicals, it's too far, but there are some interesting things. We see studies on people doing raw kale smoothies, raw green smoothies. We see some evidence of kidney stones. There's some case reports of that. And because of that, I think people just took the ball too far, and they're like, well, raw spinach has oxalic acid and it can lead to kidney stones. Thus, oxalates, bad, don't have them. They cause inflammation. This is like how it went. It just doesn't appear to be true. You look at all this, and phytic acid, same kind of thing. Phytic acid is real if you're consuming a diet like extremely high in like nuts and seeds, and you're not doing any of the soaking of them or any of the traditional methods that people have known forever, by the way. And I'll get into some of the anthropological context.
It also assumes that you don't eat a balanced enough amount of like
zinc or other. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, there might be a tiny bit of mineral absorption there. It's interesting, but you eat a steak later, you're going to get a lot of zinc. So the plant defense chemical thing is interesting, where if somebody comes up to me and they're like, yo, I'm doing a raw green smoothie every day, handful of spinach, handful of raw kale, and then I'm doing, a bunch of nuts and seeds, I might tell that person, like, damn, like that might cause some type of issue. And there's some evidence to support that. Where I don't think there's any evidence is cooked vegetables, obviously cooked beans, cooked potatoes. Like, there's some stuff I would love to sit down with Saladino and talk about, where it's like, okay, you eat raspberries and strawberries, fruit, but a cup of cooked bok choy has less oxalates than a cup of raspberries or a cup of strawberries. So why won't you eat a cup of cooked bok choy? You know what I mean? Like there's certain lower oxalate veggies that people really feel like they're sensitive to oxalates. But what I would tell people is they're probably not sensitive to these plant defense chemicals. Furthermore, traditional methods that we've always known about and people have always done significantly lower the amounts of oxalates, of phytic acid, of other compounds, plant defense chemical compounds. And we've always known about these. Oats, you want to soak and sprout your oats or soak the oats and do overnight oats, it's going to significantly lower the phytic acid. It's like if you have some concerns about it, just prepare them traditionally. And then you're missing out on the benefits of fiber. You're missing out on some polyphenols, antioxidants, some compounds like DIM, diindolylmethane.
Diindolylmethane, yeah, it's the same, yeah.
He's the man with this stuff. Which can boost your testosterone, cruciferous vegetables, so you're missing out on a lot of that stuff. What are your opinions on plant defense chemicals, fiber in general, and where have you seen this plant defense chemical conversation go to that you're obviously not a fan of? And I would probably agree with you there. So yeah, just elaborate on that.
So there's two main points that I think are the biggest things that people say against plants and specifically with plant defense chemicals. And first is kidney stones, and second is mineral absorption. Mm-hmm. And for the kidney stones, basically kidney stones can develop from all kinds of different chemicals or compounds that build up, and they're mineralization inside your kidneys that builds up and builds up until a stone is present. And so for some people, they can get oxalate stones from eating too much oxalates, but that's for certain people. It's like a genetic predisposition. It doesn't happen to everyone. It's why if you look at studies on vegans who eat so many plants and vegetables, they don't have more rates of kidney stones than the average population. They tend to have less.
Interesting. Yeah.
So you would think the people who eat the most would have a higher incidence, but they don't. So ultimately, it's not directly causing it, but if you are someone who has a predisposition to already developing them, you probably want to avoid them.
Totally.
So I don't think the kidney problems are an issue for anyone unless you are already going to have kidney issues. Then it's sort of like a treatment to cut them out. And second is binding minerals. It's like saying you're not going to accept a paycheck because of taxes. Like you're going to lose a little bit, but wouldn't you rather have everything else that you're still getting? So looking at the leafy green vegetables, some of the anti-nutrients in them will bind up some of the calcium and smaller amounts of other minerals, but also they're high calcium foods. So even if you're losing, I saw one study that it showed that 13 to like 87% there's a wide range of the calcium in these foods is bound by these anti-nutrients. But that's still like you're getting still a lot. There's a range and you're still getting net positive amounts of calcium. And if you're not someone who's sensitive to these anti-nutrients, why would you avoid them? Yeah. You're cutting out foods that not only are high in fiber, but they're also high in all these other nutrients, and they're high in phytochemicals that you can't get from things that aren't plants.
That was a big point I made in this video a while ago, and that a lot of people never touch on. They make this argument that, well, what can I get from plants that I can't get from meat? And that I can understand why you might think that, but there are these plant sulfur compounds are like anti-cancer chemicals. Additionally, not only beneficial like for your gut, but also like bone restructuring, cartilage formation, and then like there's this research on like benefits for broccoli and sulforaphane, comparing compounds that are like anti-breast cancer. And so you can eat a diet that's like low inflammatory diet, but there are also like anti-inflammatory benefits, not only from, again, like including fruits and berries with like those anthocyanins, but then also like these different sulfur containing compounds that are in broccoli. And so, yeah, it's not just the fiber, which is great for your gut and potentially preventing your body from absorbing more and polyfluoroalkyl substances.
Basically, I mean, if we want to oversimplify that study, but it's important to oversimplify it sometimes and it appears that eating vegetable fiber from veggies is binding to PFAS in your gut and helping you excrete them. Yeah. That's pretty fucking cool.
That's phenomenal. And that was one thing that I was just immediately like, because people are, again, skeptical of the fiber stuff, because their arguments against it I've never truly understood. Just because I made a joke at the beginning that like, oh, you can't digest it. Well, it's like, yeah, that's the whole point. I would hope I'd hope I'm not digesting it. And then
people say, well, you might as well eat gravel. You can't digest that either. It's like, no, that's not. No.
Yeah, so explain to people that. So fiber is non-digestible. Okay, why should I eat it?
So there are different types of fiber. There is soluble and insoluble fibers, and those fibers tend to be either fermentable or non-fermentable. And that just refers to if they can absorb water and if they can be eaten by your gut microbiome. So ultimately, we don't absorb either type, or we get very minimal amounts of calories, not enough to even track. So it's why you can see on food labels like super low calorie carbohydrate foods that have carbohydrates, but most of it's fiber because you don't get the calories from it. Yeah. So ultimately they're soluble or insoluble fibers. They do different things in your body. Soluble absorbs water, creates more like a gel. It lines the inner lining of your gut and just helps with absorption and is mainly fermentable. So that means that even though you're not digesting it, your gut is digesting it. It's producing compounds called short chain fatty acids, which not only give you fuel for your actual gut itself, the gut cells, but it also creates compounds that are essential or beneficial for mental health and all sorts of other different things in your body. So these short chain fatty acids are really, really important. And they'll say to eat other foods that have small amounts, when in reality, just eat some fiber.
Yeah.
So those are soluble and fermentable fibers. Then there's insoluble fibers, which can't absorb water. They're basically just bulk. So a lot of vegetables are high in these insoluble fibers, and they just add bulk. They push things through your gut. They help keep you regular, and they're usually not fermentable. So they don't really give you much from your gut microbiome besides them adding that bulk, which ultimately is very important. That's one of the reasons. I'll actually tie this back to the anti-nutrients. They're talking about poop and pee, basically, but it's important to move things through your gut. You don't want stuff sitting there. So the more fiber you have, the more you move things through, the less there's just things sitting in the crypts in your gut. In the same way, it's kind of like the kidney stone development. One of the things that lowers your risk and one of the biggest predictors of if you will actually develop kidney stones, if you're someone who's going to develop them, is how often you have to pee. So in the same way you want to push stuff out to get rid of kidney stones, you also want to just push stuff out of your gut. So having fiber helps with that. Also staying hydrated helps with kidney stones if that's something you're worried about. But ultimately fiber is just like good.
It's good. And really like I do these pretty cool gut tests with my functional medicine doctors, and I'm lucky enough to be able to afford these things, like $600. And I've always been eating a good amount of veggies and fiber and stuff. And we cleared up a little thing I had going on my gut like years ago. And then my functional medicine doctor was like, you know what, he looked at my diet, he's like, let's up the fiber a little bit more, even a little bit more veggies, a little bit more fruit. And all that happened was my gut health improved. A lot of these beneficial species of bacteria in my gut proliferated more. And so it's like, I just doing my own tests on myself and looking at all of the data, I could never recommend to somebody to do a healthy diet that completely eliminates plants and legumes and potatoes. Potatoes are one of the best foods you can do. You talk about affordability. Potatoes are amazing. And they really, also these things complete dishes. I'm a huge fan of like cooking. I'm going to go on like a Spain, Italy little food tour. You know what I mean? It's like if I was not eating vegetables or legumes or any type of grains or any type of, then it'd just be tough to just live life and eat, you know? And then again, I don't think there's any rational reason to avoid these things. Potatoes are a superfood. Look at the amount of potassium in a potato. And just anecdotally, I always feel like my skin's better. I feel better when I'm eating more of those foods that we just talked about. And yeah, I mean, there's going to be personal preferences there for some people, you know. So I did a post with eating some beans, and people are like, well, whenever I eat beans, I get like, you know, gut distress. Like, all right, maybe you're more of a potato and rice guy. Like, it's not.
Or maybe you just don't eat enough fiber.
Yeah, and they need to actually eat some of that for, you know, a good amount of time, and that'll go away for sure.
What you're talking about with the cooking, I think that's also like being well-rounded, because just eating straight up ground beef and then you crack like a raw egg in there. I've seen this so much, or they have like a little bit of like pineapple. It's like, how are you really enjoying life? Like you could say that there are such amazing health benefits, but these same people also opposed to exercise for some reason because of their misunderstanding of stress and cortisol. And then they're eating this food that they say is so enjoyable, but I don't believe them for a moment. And I think that's just an unhappy way to live. And again, with the
you want to have variety, you know what I mean? Variety is the spice of life. And like I think we all, I'm sure everybody in this room and every person watching this, you should be comfortable making like I don't know what to call it, like a little healthy dog food like looking thing. You get some, you know, meat, you throw some veggies in there real quick, some rice, some whatever. You're just throwing something in their kitchen sink and eating that, and it looks like unappealing.
Like, it's all brown and like mushy.
Yeah, but it tastes good and it's getting you your nutrients. But you should really, as a human being, learn to cook up some good looking meals that look cool, that taste good. And you should be able to enjoy different types of cuisines and stuff like that without major fear. And this is why, again, I don't know, man, it's just tough. Cause like, I want to talk about, you know, glyphosate. I have concerns about glyphosate, but it doesn't mean I'm going to not go to a taqueria and eat taco with a corn tortilla. It's like the human body is adaptable, and that should be the goal of being a healthy, happy human being, is that you're adaptable. And so I think it's just tough, man. It's a gray area thing, and a lot of people want it to be completely black and white.
Also, these health issues expand out into a lot of political issues with the glyphosate and the legislation in like 5 different states recently that Bayer Monsanto is giving money to, of course, add in these, and they're already subwriting most of these policy additions that they want protections for their company so they can't face legal suits, especially for people who are farm workers or farmers who are exposed to this that may be contributing to cancer. And of course, there's big dialogue about that. They'll deny that there's any connection, and the U.S. FDA or U.S. Department of Agriculture may not say it, but the European Union may say it. It's important to not just care about it for yourself, but also for other people. Same with you might not want to consume microplastics or forever chemicals. Those also destroy natural environments, get into rivers and tributaries, and they're killing not only just fish and wildlife, but polluting some of these natural scenes which we should want to enjoy. So it's more than just about physical health and your mental health. It's a holistic view 100%. That incorporates a lot.
100%, man. I think we make a sun balm product, and it's non-nano zinc oxide and beef tallow, and a lot of people that throw hate on it will be like, oh my god, it's these chemical-based sunscreens, and they call them chemical-based not because there's chemicals in them, that's just what they call them.
Yeah.
By the way, people are like, there's chemicals and everything. We get that. But the mineral-based sunscreens, there's been studies showing that they don't damage the marine wildlife and they don't damage reefs. And some states have outlawed the chemical-based ones successfully because there's some really good research firmly proving that these damage reefs, they damage marine wildlife, oxybenzone, avobenzone, these type of things. So I think a lot of people will look at a product like that and be like, oh, Brendan wants to fearmonger about the chemical-based sunscreens. And it's like I'm not a fan of them. I have concerns about what their effects are for human health, but there's so many mineral-based sunscreens out there that use non-nano zinc oxide. I'm not somebody who says you should never protect yourself from the sun. But a big part of it for me is also I want to be comfortable wearing something when I go surf that I know isn't killing a fish below me. So again, sort of a random tangent. I wanted to ask you something. Top fiber foods, just right off your head. What do you like?
I eat a lot of beans, honestly. Yeah. A lot of beans. I eat a lot of fruit like bananas and strawberries, blueberries. I don't know. I don't really think about this that much.
Yeah, you just
top fiber foods.
Diet. I mean, they're
I also think, even though these might not be the top foods that you top tier foods, but high fiber wraps or tortillas or just high fiber types of foods like that in general, high fiber breads and stuff that make it lower calorie but also give you that fiber, just make it so easy. If you're someone who maybe just doesn't know how to cook vegetables, or that's something that's really new to you, and maybe you're picky, you don't like a lot of fruits, getting fiber wraps and making the same foods you're already eating using those makes it not only lower calorie but also higher fiber, and now you're at least getting some type of fiber.
For sure.
You might not be getting a diverse amount of fiber. It might just be a ton of cellulose or whatever, but it's fiber.
Yeah, so for sure.
Ultimately, I think that's the easiest swap that people can start doing. Just get a high fiber wrap.
Yeah, 100%.
They're a little more gentle. You kind of got to be careful when you're eating them, but it's fiber.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. I'm eating veggies. Had rice and beans last night. My wife loves whipping that up. There's a bunch of, I love potatoes. I know they're not the greatest source of fiber, but there's amazing, huge.
I would say hemp seed hearts and flaxseed being some. Yeah. I know people will say something about flax or chia and discussions about hormones, just they get into the weeds about even mint. But hemp seed hearts, if people are trying to gain have healthy additional calories. That's another source.
I wish chia and hemp and those things flax would rebrand themselves as good sources of fiber versus good source of omega-3, because we know that the conversion there is pretty weak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's another random sidebar, but next thing I want to get into, artificial sweeteners. Mm-hmm. Artificial sweeteners, one of the most debated things ever. Again, something that I've changed my stance on. I used to be really anti-artificial sweeteners. For sake of this conversation, we're talking about aspartame, acesulfame potassium, and sucralose. I know there's different ones and all, but those are the widely used ones. So I think I was definitely corrected and looked more into the research on the studies on artificial sweeteners. And I still have some concerns, which I'll voice to you here. But overall, why I've stopped, if somebody's buying diet soda in the store and I'm filming one of those videos, I don't go up to them and do the $100 challenge. When I go up to them, you're buying soda. Oh, I'm getting diet. Do your thing. Why have I done that? Because of the countless stories and countless studies that show, my goal is to get people to quit chugging hundreds of grams of high fructose corn syrup, which again, I don't think any medical professional, doctor, anybody that's in nutrition whatsoever would agree that that's a good thing. Chugging hundreds of grams of corn syrup, which many Americans are doing. Trying to get people off that. I think everyone would be a fan of that. Diet soda is more nuanced because people will quit those and integrate diet soda into their life. And that's a step that they need to take. It's you know, I liken it to a drug addict sometimes, like an alcoholic. Like if there's an alcoholic drinking 10 beers a day and he goes to a non-alcoholic beer and I say to him, oh, but like the non-alcoholic beer, there's these compounds in there that might, it's just not like a real net positive thing to do. And furthermore, the studies on asulfame, potassium, and aspartame, it just doesn't appear that they're extremely damaging. Sucralose, I have some concerns about sucralose. Like if I were to have to choose an artificial sweetener, I probably would go towards the other two than sucralose. But again, it doesn't appear sucralose is causing some major damage. Some like, oh, this is going to be, and especially given what it's used for, which is, hey, people want something sweet. They want something that tastes good. And oftentimes in the gym community, these are usually people taking a pre-workout before they go into the gym. Okay, well, this is a community that like, this is going to be a pretty small factor in their health. Or this is a person consuming a beverage where they quit something that has a bunch of high fructose corn syrup in it and they're going towards something that has a bit of sucralose. Overall, that probably is a good switch. My concerns about sucralose, I sent you the study, was 10-week study. They gave people, healthy people too, which is cool, 48 milligrams of sucralose for 10 weeks. It was hard to find the exact amount of sucralose in some of these drinks. You know, you look it up, they're kind of vague, but it appears like a Celsius, which is like a really popular drink, is 100 milligrams sucralose. And we talked about the study. We both agree that the whole insulin and glucose thing, it's pretty negligible. There's nothing really to discuss there. If they threw a control of high fructose corn syrup in there, we'd be like, wow, sucralose is amazing here. It's definitely not negatively, you know. But we did see some slight gut microbiome alterations, which for someone that really likes to get in the weeds and does all these GI map tests, I'm like, oh, damn, like it lowered acidophilus a little bit. Like that's interesting. What are your thoughts on just artificial sweeteners overall?
Yeah, I think you kind of have to take them each individually and look at what your concerns are with each of them. In general, for most people, I don't think they're really a problem in any amount that they could be consumed in. Like if you're drinking soda, Train Bloom has a great video on this. You'd have to drink, to get even the minimum amount of aspartame to potentially cause problems, which is 1/100th of the actual amount that would cause problems, you'd have to have 47 sodas every day, which you would die from water toxicity. So
remember that guy was drinking like 16? That was the highest amount we saw. There was one dude who was drinking 16 Dr. Peppers a day, so he said. But yeah, that's not 47.
Like,
so
that's like probably more even water than he should be drinking.
Yeah,
like,
no, it was crazy.
So yeah, you would have to have so much to even reach the minimum threshold that it'd probably be impossible for something specifically like aspartame. When it comes to sucralose, I think seeing studies that show that there is an alteration in the gut microbiome, I think is absolutely a fair concern. But I don't necessarily agree that they say it causes dysbiosis because, and this is something we don't
fully know. Yeah, the gut is complex. We don't even fully know. Even that company that GI Map, which is one of the leaders in gut health, they're constantly changing their thing. I think 10 years ago they had a strain of bacteria in the gut that they labeled as negative, and then they recently changed that, and it appears like it's a positive. So yeah, we're learning more there.
So I kind of want to go a bit in the weeds with this because I come from a research university and there's a lot of research on the gut microbiome. We had a lot of human milk researchers. So they'd study how that affects the microbiome. And they did studies in tribal Africa on tribal women viewing their gut microbiome. And they found that several of these women, when they did shotgun metagenomics, so just seeing what is everything in their gut, and just what are the strains that are present, many of these people had harmful growths. They had like the specific type of E. coli that's problematic, that's like overgrowing in their gut. They have all of these different strains that usually would be seen as negative, but are actually not causing any problems for a lot of these people. So it's more so like you have to see what is the overall gut microbiome and what is, because it's a community in there. They're all being fed different things. And if it's not causing problems, I mean, sometimes, things can happen silently that you're unaware of and they can lead to problems. But usually if you're having gut problems,
Yeah.
And with sucralose specifically, I make that point because you can see a change in your gut microbiome without there being problems. And there could be things that might be labeled as negative, but that isn't really an objective statement unless maybe in some specific cases where you just really don't want a specific strain. So with sucralose, we saw, like you said, acidophilus change. There were 2 other strains that changed. One of them is something that was usually deemed as negative that there became less of it. And then there's one that was deemed as negative that there was more of it and smaller. So there were small changes in all of those. So ultimately my take on that is that when you feed someone something new, the gut's going to change.
Gut's change, yeah,
so
for sure.
It's like it's adapting to whatever you feed it, and there are strains that are going to grow based on whatever fuel they are given. So ultimately, if you introduce a new sweetener, you're going to see a change. And whether that change is positive or negative comes down to what are the actual effects on the human that's consuming it. So I am not concerned about maybe a tiny little change, but also if you are someone who that upsets you and causes you problems and you get bloated or cause GI distress, then maybe it is something you want to avoid. But for most people, I don't think that, having some artificial sweeteners, I don't think you should avoid a protein powder because it has sucralose unless you get upset by it. And what's really important that you mentioned is that ultimately most people are upping their consumption of artificial sweeteners because they are going away from sugar. And
they're going lower calorie. They're oftentimes, most people in the United States are overweight, and because of overconsumption of calories, which we'll touch on in a bit, the whole calorie thing. And if they're going towards a product like that and lowering their amount of calories they're consuming and they're going to a deficit, that's why I try not to throw so much shade at it anymore.
So that's in general my take. But I do kind of want to talk about your strategy, because this is something that is one of the big reasons why people are upset that I'm associated with you, is like going to Crumble or going to McDonald's or going to grocery stores and giving people money for not buying things. So I don't necessarily like that approach. And I think it makes really good entertainment and it's good content. It just doesn't necessarily actually lead to sustainable change. And that's also probably not really the point of it. I mean, people will say okay, maybe I can make the swap that they might not have ever thought of before because they're stuck in their routine. But ultimately change doesn't come about from just being hey, do this, here's a reward. It's more so through education, but also that's you do that too. So
for sure. I think it's a totally fair criticism, right? And I can elaborate on why I do these videos and what I've seen. So
please.
I think the one fundamental difference with a lot of people that don't like these videos and myself is, for example, if we had a bag of blue Takis here, you would say this isn't a bad food.
I would say don't
maybe
eat
your
a ton
take
of
might
it.
be a little bit different than some of the other creators, but
I
a
would
lot
say
of people say
food-
there's no bad foods. Because you're not against the seed oils in them. You're not against the potentially glyphosate sprayed wheat. You're not against the corn syrup. Do you know what I mean?
So I think we should probably clarify on that too.
Totally.
Because ultimately, I think there's no bad food in as much as there's no morality attached to food. You won't be a bad person for eating this.
I completely agree with that. And I've tried to, I've done a lot of stuff of obviously film with these content creators, and they ask me whether eat a crumble in front of me. It's I'm not gonna hate on them I'm not gonna not be friends with you because of that. I would say that it's probably gonna make you feel not great in the short term, and if you eat a lot of it and get in the habit of eating it, it's probably, which you probably agree with that. If you get in the habit of eating it too much, everyone would agree with that. That if you, then it's gonna be bad for you. But keep on. Elaborate on it.
I was basically just going to say, it's context dependent. If you're someone who this is causing you problems for, it's not a bad food, meaning that you have to completely cut it out and never have it again. It's just you might want to find strategies to make it so that this can be, if it's something you really enjoy, it can still be a part of a lifestyle that's also promoting you towards your goals. So ultimately, I don't eat a lot of junk food, but if I want it, I have it because I know that I don't have to avoid it. I just shouldn't have it all the time because that's not going to lead me down the path that I want to go down. So when I was in LA, I'd have ice cream. I even had some alcohol. I had In-N-Out. I did the protein style though with the lettuce wrap for the first time ever. Because they're not bad foods because they're not causing me problems. And it's worse, I think, to feel like I can never have these things.
Totally. So, I think that's very fair. And I one of the takes I sort of have on it is when you look at the stats in this country of, almost 50% obesity, we have a massive childhood diabetes epidemic that appears to be growing. We have a lot of people who are just overweight. It sort of feels almost I view it as an alcoholic in a way. A lot of people are in a way addicted to over-consuming. I think would be where we can find common ground. Over-consuming these foods like soda, hyper-processed foods, going to McDonald's just on a regular basis. And why I do this content is because I do feel like a lot of people get in this sort of state of just being in a habit, being in just a routine of just not intuitively thinking about what they ingest, which I think we're both trying to get people to just think a little bit about it. And so when I do these videos, it's not so much for the person in the video. This is where I agree with you, and I think people that would criticize videos need to hear me say this. When I go up to somebody and I say, hey, here's $100, I want you to quit soda for 30 days. You are right that is not a very effective way to get that person, that individual, to make really good changes that are long-lasting in their life. And there are studies on that where the reward-based thing, you're going to get this $100 if you make this change. Where it has provided impact, and I've had thousands and thousands of messages on this. I've had people in person tell me, is it will break through the algorithm. People will go, oh, this guy's at McDonald's. I eat McDonald's all the time. Oh, he's offering somebody $100 to not eat McDonald's. Why? What's going? Oh, diet might matter. And I'm saying stuff like that. How are you going to feel after you eat that? How often do you eat McDonald's? It will get people thinking about that, going down the rabbit hole of health, and they will get healthier. And that happens a lot. It's why I like doing that content. It's one of those wide net pieces of content where it breaks the mold of just like daily life. Like, what is it? People will say, I didn't even know, I didn't know anything, but this just wasn't in their algorithm whatsoever. Mm-hmm. And they're like, why is this dude giving somebody $100 to quit soda? What's so bad about drinking, soda every day? Mm-hmm. And they start to go down that rabbit hole. They start to research health and they get healthy. Mm-hmm. And that's like one of the reasons why I still do it.
I don't know why it's either necessarily shaming them or why it's like the harmful or problematic element to it. Obviously, people are playing the social media game, and you touched on this much earlier in this, about probably 30 minutes ago. And then you do have to break through the algorithm that exposes people, as we discussed, to the other things that you post. And so it's not just about that, or it's not about that specific person, and it's not like you're like going up to them and then insulting their appearance, or like really trying to dig on like whatever they're eating. And you're giving them money for it. It's not like you're just being antagonizing. Mm-hmm. So I think that the criticism there maybe doesn't fully understand. And then they're not seeing the personable side of you. That's the only interpretation of you or your content that people may see, or that they have a biased view of. Mm-hmm. If they were to sit down with you like we have, or to even watch your podcasts pieces in full, then they would see like, how personable you are, that you are a really charitable person, that you do care more about like general health, and then trying to reach out to people and like make this impact, and that you're not overly focusing on, it's not literally just crumble cookie that's like the evils of America's food system or something. It's just, that's like one thing that we can talk about for like 1 second.
For sure. It's like a good jumping off point of like, damn, like people are addicted to just these patterns of diet that I think are bad, and it's shown in the overall stats of what's going on in the United States. But I think it's totally fair for you to, say that, hey, I'm not a fan of this type of content. It doesn't, in your opinion, it doesn't provide like the, effect of change, and that's fair. You know what I mean? This is the whole thing with the whole podcast, and like you talking to Saladino. This is one of the most important parts, I think, like that I've tried to really push. You can disagree with somebody and still be friends and have a conversation. We've lost that in the United States over the last couple of years with politics, with people with their families. One family member likes one politician, one likes other. And it's caused like this complete dissolving of friendship, of family, of community. And I really, that's like one of the biggest bummers for me ever. And I think it leads us down a really bad place. So like, it's so important that like something like that, you can be like, I disagree with this. And I can be like, oh, it's fine. Here's why I do it. And you're not jumping up and down, threatening me with violence or anything. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I disagree with this. Here's why.
Being able to get along is so incredibly important, not just for like politics or food arguments or social media where people are already like angry, but like the fact that that is part of health as well. Not only just your mental health, but this research. This is something that I posted saying like the most important things in life are like family and community. That this research on people's like total life expectancy based upon their social activity, that's another thing that's very important that people are not touching on enough. That even obese people were living like 10 years longer just based upon their social activity, which is generally connected to greater physical activity as well. So, and there's also issues with, nonagenarians and cognition and like, loss of memory. Mm-hmm. Having social activity, having community, having people around you helps to prevent against the like onset of dementia and Alzheimer's. So sure. I feel that being able to agree is not just about, I want to get my point across and understand what's true. It's also about like helping you. I'm a pretty disagreeable person. I like to argue sometimes. Mm-hmm. I think people on social media generally love to, mm-hmm. but you have to understand that like in real life, when you truly are trying to help people, I care about having community. You clearly have built up this community where you're having people come out. You're showing your generosity and care for even just like your audience and the people who randomly, come forward to talk to you. It's not just about, I want to agree with people. Let's talk about what's true. But like, if you don't have community, you're alone. You're gonna die sooner.
Yeah, 100%. And like, I think a big thing that you're open to, and unfortunately maybe some people aren't, is there's this idea, and I think actually the pandemic really pressed this idea, and it caused people to go so far the other way, which is, look, science is amazing, okay? It's great. You obviously just got your degree. Science is great. We all love science. During the pandemic, this whole thing went forward of, this is the science. Stop asking questions. Stop telling us your anecdotes. This is when real actual scientists would say, like, this is the science currently, which I think is a very fair thing to say. This is the science currently about seed oils, is what you will tell people, right?
Yeah.
But everybody has to be open to change. This is why I have to be open to change. Hey, Brennan, you posted this, years ago about artificial sweeteners. You might want to read this and look at this. Oh, damn. Oh, you posted this about raw milk, that it has lactase. Well, here's the amount of lactase that it has. This is really interesting. I love that type of discourse, and I'm always willing to. This is one of the reasons I've never coined my diet anything. I'll say, oh, this is like what the Santa Cruz Insula's diet, like, but I'm not like putting out like this is the diet. Oh, get this diet. Why? It's subject to change. It is absolutely subject to change. It just is, like, like, I love my diet right now. It's very diverse, and I like eating what I eat, but it's subject to change. So I'm not gonna coin anything or like really stand like I eat a wide variety of foods and stuff like that. And I don't know, man. Like, this idea that I think people are sick of is, this is the science. You are wrong if you question it whatsoever. And what we know now is firm. You look at creatine, man. Creatine was 20 years ago, 25 years ago. You took creatine, woof. I don't know.
That's steroids.
Yeah, no, it's
You're
like,
gonna
and
go bald.
You would go to a
DHT.
doctor. You'd go to a doctor, and you still will if you have like an outdated doctor, and they'll be like, "Oh, you're taking creatine. That's gonna cause kidney damage. And now it's very well accepted by just about everybody that taking creatine is good for you, and you probably should be taking 5 grams of creatine, maybe more, per day.
That same perspective was applied to high protein diets, which we now understand do not cause, like, unless you already have pre-existing renal and nephrology issues. But yeah, that being able to change is really important, because if you were afraid of having more protein, you're missing out on a lot of benefits for maybe skin cosmetics or bone mineral density as you're aging.
Yeah, just get in those good calories from protein, and you're more satiated.
Being more satiated, yeah.
You're a dietitian. Are you a dietitian now? Can you elaborate?
I'm eligible to sit for my exam, and I will very soon. Okay.
So dietitians not that long ago would tell people, you probably just want to eat like 2 eggs per week. I think was like, now they changed that. Now, there's this other thing. No, that is not some evil thing to convince people to do X, Y, and Z. That is just, they had the evidence there, and these were the conclusions they were making based on egg consumption and saturated fats and cholesterol, and then they revised it, and now they say, hey, you can eat, I don't know the official recommendation or anything right now, but the thing is no longer there if you should only eat 1 egg a week or 2 eggs a week, but things are subject to change, I think, is a very important statement.
Yeah, and ultimately, anyone who says that this is the science, like, get lost, has kind of lost the plot.
Totally.
One of the main tenets of science is that it doesn't tell you exact truths. It's not necessarily like conclusive. It is always ever changing with whatever is present. So anyone who is truly a scientist should know that, like, what they believe now is just based off of what is available to them. And it's why people don't make these direct statements, say this does this will do this, you have to do this. It's like, this might be what's best, this could do this, because ultimately we don't know exactly.
For sure.
So you have to accept that idea that what you think you know right now is based off of simply your beliefs and what you have been exposed to, and that you might not have been exposed to something else that will change your beliefs. And
absolutely.
Many people aren't willing to admit that they may have some segment of bias as well. And if you really wanted to, what you're talking about and what you brought up, if you really want to see the greatest example of this, all you really need to do is look at the science-based lifting community and just look at the exercise arguments, not just nutrition. Yes, people are opinionated, but they change literally every season.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Yeah, I posted one video on me in the gym. I showed my workout routine, and all of the comments were like, holy fatigue, bro. Fatigue, man.
I do it as a joke. Like, I did like a row variation that I knew wasn't like optimal, and I'm like, TNF, is this good? Just to troll, just to get those comments, Yeah, it's so funny. Yeah.
I did 4 sets of an exercise. Like, dude, what?
Yeah.
Like, okay, come on.
Cortisol, it's catabolic, dude. It's over.
But I mean, it's funny because we all, that, like, the science-based lifting thing is, I think a really good example of, it's provided me tons of benefit, like years ago, swinging around kettlebells, like just kind of random like stuff, and like seeing all that science-based lifting content like 2-3 years ago, like it's helped my workout so much. It's helped save me time in the gym. And I think with nutrition, I think we both want to and just diet and lifestyle overall. I think we both want to put forward a message of saving people time, saving people energy. We all talked about heart disease and all this stuff, and a really important topic we both touched on is mental health. Mm-hmm. Mental health, I won't even say the word because like YouTube will flag it, but like people offing themselves is actually the number one cause of death of young men, you know? And so, yeah, man, like overall, like this year and last like year, I want to come into it from a different angle. I don't want to be that guy that people think would shame somebody if they eat seed oils. I don't want to be that guy, that people, if they're drinking diet soda and they quit soda or whatever, they just like a diet soda, whatever. I don't want to be that person that they think I would shame them. I'm going to show how I live my life and what I like to do, but I don't want people to think of themselves as lesser than if they don't do what I do. I don't have all the answers. Nobody does. There's some general things that we're all starting to agree on, which people should really focus on, which are sleep, which are exercise, which are eating more real food. Calories we'll touch on right now. I think all that stuff is where people should start. But yeah, man, that's why, and then this is why you're open to filming with me and why your audience shouldn't give you hate and my audience shouldn't give me hate. Like, you can disagree with somebody and still find common ground, like you're saying, and still be friends. And y'all need to take that into your personal life. The people that are saying that very fervent message in your comments of how dare you even be in a photo or a video with Paul Saladino, in their own lives, they probably have issues with their mom, issues with their dad, issues with their brother, over shit that is just not that important for overall life. Like, find common ground and move on and have fun discussions and see the humor in it,
Yeah, getting comments like, how could you shake his hand? And I was like,
it's insane.
Because I wanted to have a respectful encounter, and it pretty much was. It's like I wanted to come and talk. I didn't want to, even though I don't agree with basically anything this guy says, and I do think that ultimately he's harmful to a lot of people. I understand that being an a-hole isn't going to fix that.
Yeah,
going up to him and like trying to make him look bad isn't going to do that.
Someone like Saladino, even someone like myself, like when you get a big following, man, like there's so much being thrown at you. Like in the time we've been sitting here, I've probably gotten 1,000 Instagram DMs. I've probably had 15 people reach out to collaborate. You know what I mean? It's impossible to manage. And if Jacob runs up to Saladino at a meetup after he's met hundreds of people, he's tired, whatever, and he starts yelling at him about seed oils, that's just not there's gonna be a security guard that's just gonna like remove him. Like it's not logical. And I hope these people leaving these comments are just bots or something, because like some of them are just crazy. Mm-hmm. But I think most people are happy that we're having a conversation like this, and I think it's super valuable to them. One of the last things I want to touch on is calories, because this is something I've always believed. It's weird even saying that, believed. It's like, this is real. I've always, before that, calories in, calories out 100% matters. It's the basis for how our body looks. It's the basis for weight gain and weight loss. It is weight gain and weight loss. There have been studies where people have eaten Twinkies and lost weight. Mm-hmm. You could eat all of the foods that I hate on. You could go from crumble cookie to McDonald's, back and forth, and you could lose weight and even gain muscle eating those foods. So I think that's a really important point to put forward and just firmly establish. Why I'm a fan of food quality, and I think you are too, is because, our body has an immune system. Our body has our gut microbiome. If you're eating foods that make you sick and you might be out of the gym, you might be moving less, it's going to make life more difficult for you. If you eat foods that give you a headache, well, it's going to be tougher to hit a hard workout at the gym. If you eat something late at night that has 300 grams of cornstarch, whatever, and it negatively affects your sleep, then you're going to get a worse workout the next day. All those things matter, but calories in, calories out, it's been clearly established, and you could eat the healthiest foods in the world. You could do whatever. If you're in a surplus, you're going to be putting on weight.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and ultimately, I think what's important to understand is that a calorie deficit isn't necessarily like a method for weight loss. It is just simply what causes it, or what causes you to gain weight. So people will be like, oh, I need to do a calorie deficit. It's like you don't do the calorie deficit. The calorie deficit just happens based on what you're doing. Mm-hmm. So what you're doing is, or what you should be doing is finding foods that not only fuel you and give you the nutrients that you need, but they keep you full and they make you happy, which ultimately is where it could include some ice cream or some McDonald's.
Totally.
And you can fit that into the calorie deficit to help meet your goals.
Yeah.
But it's like the calorie deficit is in the background. What you're doing should be allowing you to be in that calorie deficit in a way that's sustainable and beneficial for you. And I actually noticed personally when I decide to actually enter a deficit and try and lose some fat, I consciously make the effort to start eating more filling foods. So it actually becomes easier.
Totally.
Because I start having an extra high fiber diet, an extra high protein diet, and I'm less hungry than I was when I wasn't trying to do the calorie deficit, even though it sometimes does include some fast foods, because everything else is, again, the bigger picture, including more filling foods.
For sure.
So it's like, yes, absolutely, calories are like the only thing that determine if you are going to lose or gain fat. It is obviously much more complex and nuanced. I love that word, nuance, than it just entering a calorie deficit. And people say, "Oh, my hormones make it so that deficits don't work for me," or my thyroid.
Impossible.
It's like,
my polycystic
I hate to
ovarian
bring up
syndrome.
like bad stuff, but think of people in famines. Think of people in Auschwitz. Do you think their hormones were dialed in? Do you think if we ran a GI map test on those people, do you think everything would be dialed in? No. Why were they so frail and losing weight?
yeah,
Well, it's a severe calorie deficit.
Typhus.
They had the worst health probably imaginable. And coming from the anthropology background, like before I started doing what I'm doing, I was really going to go get my master's in public health. And this is like, so like, I'm really interested in that stuff. And it's like, you can just think of like, me going out to like Rwanda or something is like what I would have been doing and looking at people that are experiencing a famine and being like, well, these people's thyroid health and their testosterone, like they're not optimizing their testosterone. So it's like, what are we talking about? Like, it's pretty clear, like you were saying, like weight loss and weight gain, like calories in, calories out, it's right here. Now, but these other things, no one's disagreeing that they make life easier for sure. Oh, your testosterone's dialed in, like you're going to make that deficit easier if you're trying to lose weight because you're going to feel more energy. All these, neurotransmitter stuff, like dopamine and all this stuff I like to geek out on, and like, it can make life significantly easier. And that guy eating Twinkies and losing weight, he said it was extremely difficult, but he was just very mentally hard-headed to show that it was able to be done. But yeah, oh my God, he like talks about the food cravings he got and the headaches and all the issues. But it does show that you could be nutrient deficient, eating a bunch of food that I'm not a fan of, and you're gonna lose weight. You're in that deficit.
I feel like simplifying the argument to this though, it's good because it paints a picture for people and it does, help them to generally see that there's possibility for change, even if it's not nuanced, not intelligent, but like if you can do it in ways, like you said, that would be more sustainable, more enjoyable, and also assist with, preventing muscle catabolism. So like having a more micronutrient rich diet, like you said, in a way, like seeking what's satiating, that rated perceived energy levels while in a caloric deficit, even up to like, 500 calories per day less than what would be like their basal metabolic rate, that people are still able to feel fine. That would be at a weight where they're like rapidly losing weight. Same with maintaining total muscle mass or lean body mass. And, research on that, of course, is going to vary on your, criteria and your assessment of it. But it's still very important that you still drive home the importance of calories, that like you're not just talking about, different other arcane things, because that very basic message is still going to help convince people. And then you do have to, from there, talk about what foods might be more satiating, what they should opt for. But yeah, if you're talking about calories, I'd also like to ask this question. What do you think about RFK Jr. 3 days ago saying that we would hope that in the next couple of years, all Americans will be wearing, wearables, things to track their movement, exercise, and sleep? I'm sure that's a little hyperbole. I'm not certain that the United States is going to literally mandate people to start wearing things that track their calories. I would be astonished if that happened. Do you think that a thing like that, like a program to make it more affordable or to assist people in that way, maybe coupled with education around like calories, that would actually tackle the main obesity epidemic that we have, especially the childhood stuff, which you talked about?
I think with like the public health stuff, with the Make America Healthy Again movement, I obviously, overall, I'm a fan of that, but I do have my concerns. I mean, we saw, Saladino drinking raw milk in the White House and it's like, man, like Mike, like, I just wish we could focus on some of the bigger picture stuff that I think everyone would agree on and we can make more progress. So if there was some public health push to educate people in the United States about calories in, calories out, what foods are satiating, how to, maybe achieve a healthy calorie deficit if you're overweight and what that might look like, I'd be a huge fan of something like that. I don't know why during the pandemic we didn't do some type of at-home on a yoga mat size area of your house or apartment, do a simple stretching and workout. Like, Michelle Obama actually did a lot of I would say, decent stuff for public health. She was, telling people to work out and eat more real food and all that type of stuff. Overall, the Make America Healthy Again movement, I'm a fan of, but there's some stuff they're focusing on where I'm like, damn, like you're really focusing on something that is just not that important in the grand scheme of things, so that can sometimes be a bummer for me. But overall, I think the fact that health is being discussed on such a big platform is important. But yeah, I do think they should refocus.
Jacob, I think you did a focus actually on the dietary guidelines as well, and why people kind of misinterpret what the government is saying, and that even if they examine that, they might see things that they agree with more. Even but most people
they changed the food pyramid. I think this is a really important thing.
That hasn't been a thing for over 15 years. Yeah, or almost 15 years. That's they're not telling you to eat a grain-based diet or like refined.
My plate now, is that still
my plate of the guidelines. And so there's the My Plate guidelines, which are like actually building your plate, and then there's the DGAs, or the dietary recommendations, the dietary guidelines for Americans. Mm-hmm. So the My Plate is basically like half your plate is fruits and vegetables, the other half is protein, and then there's dairy. It's a very moderate.
Sounds pretty good to me.
It's like you can just split up your plate and have everything you need, and like some starchy carbs as well.
Yeah.
So it's including all the different food groups in a way that is moderate. And it changes based on what your goals are. Like if you're an athlete, you're going to have a larger amount of starchy carbohydrates to try and fuel you more, or in a higher amount of protein. So that's like, people will look at that, unless they're someone who's against vegetables or dairy or something, they're gonna be like, okay, that like obviously that
pretty
makes
reasonable.
sense.
Yeah.
I can have some sweet potato and some broccoli and some like an apple or something. But then you look at the dietary guidelines for Americans, and people are like, well, you shouldn't be following these guidelines because the government, no one's actually healthy, even though these guidelines are in place, but also no one's following these guidelines.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
the guidelines are like get 150 minutes a week of moderate to vigorous intensity activity, to eat foods that are culturally appropriate, to try and reduce sugar sweetened beverages, maybe swap them out for non-sugar sweetened beverages. And it's like, this is all stuff that you say. This is all stuff that even for the most part, people like Saladino would say. There's so much common ground. This is my big point is, we agree on so much, but we focus only on the things we don't agree on.
Yep.
And it's like, if we can agree that this is good and we can get more people to do this and people actually start doing it, then we can start focusing on the things that people maybe shouldn't be doing, or that they should start doing.
100%.
And if people actually started following those guidelines and those recommendations and building My Plate meals, the health of the country would improve greatly.
Yeah.
But the issue is the actual implementation. It's education. Do people actually know how to do this? And most importantly, it's the resources. The amount of people who live in food deserts or don't have the income to be able to afford these, or have just not been taught how to do it, or if they have health literacy, if they can even understand what they need to be doing, ultimately it's access to this. Mm-hmm. There's the determinants of health, which is so much more than just what are you eating. It's what access do you have? What is your social standing? Where do you live? All of these things play into it. And that's also, to go kind of back to the content discussion we were having about paying people, one of the biggest criticisms I see other people say is, you go up to McDonald's, you say, here's $100, don't get McDonald's. It's like, well, people will say, oh, what if that was a mother getting food? She just got home from work and she's feeding her kids, and that's like the only option. It's like, that's a fair criticism, but also, like you said, that's not your main point of doing this. It's not your target audience. You're trying to move people into just understanding that, hey, there are alternatives. Mm-hmm. And so that was kind of a mini tangent, but ultimately the guideline recommendations are very moderate, very reasonable. And if people did follow them, we would likely see public health improve.
Yeah.
It's just people are so anti-government and anti-establishment, anti-science, anti-politician that they throw out any of these things that are attached to them, when in reality, if they're already trying to get healthy, they're probably doing most of these things.
For sure. 100%. Wow. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot here so far. I think overall, guys, the whole seed oil thing, I know you guys wanted to see us talk about it, and we gave you guys a lot there about seed oils. The more important things with health are the other things we discussed. You want to eat a good source of protein. You want to get your fiber. You want to get your veggies. You want to exercise. You want to sleep well. And yeah, I think that's the most important things to cover. And I think just another really important part of this whole content that we did is you can't exist in an echo chamber. Mm-hmm. My audience shouldn't, your audience shouldn't. You should be able to talk to people about ideas in a calm way and still be friends with them. And that's probably one of the most important things right now, because just of how divisive the United States is getting and social media is getting. It's not that deep. At the end of the day, mental health is probably what's going to take most young males out. Statistically, it will. So you got to focus on that. Yeah. So what? And then, yeah, I guess in conclusion, anything else you want to bring up or cover?
Yeah, just like you said, mental health is so important, and finding ways to use food and use health to empower you rather than to bring you down and make you feel worse.
For sure.
Just doing whatever you can that makes you feel fulfilled both with your physical health, spiritually, mentally, religiously, and making that your lifestyle and spreading that to other people is ultimately what's most important. And focusing again on what you have in common with people rather than what you don't have in common, and then prioritizing that, and eventually maybe moving to what you disagree on. But
yeah,
focusing on the big things, doing what you can. Don't stress out about seed oils. Don't feel like you can't eat something because it has a little bit of seed oils in it. That's just not good for you mentally.
Totally.
Whether it's good for you physically or not, just do what you can to feel empowered and feel happy and feel fulfilled, and try and spread that to other people.
Facts.
Yeah, the 23 men per 100,000, so there's a few thousand every year. Of course, it's happening at an increasing rate, and we've seen it obviously with different demographics. The point about community that I tried to make, I think that is still those will be one of the greatest things in your life. If you're on a hard time, you eating the perfect diet isn't going to save you if you need somebody to help you. If you got in a car accident and you needed someone to give you a ride, just because you cut out seed oils, that's not going to come give you a ride. Yep. If you need help moving, if you're in the hospital and you're alone, just because you didn't eat seed oils because they might contain something, like that isn't going to help you. What it is going to be the other people, and then cutting other people off in your life because they don't think exactly like you, especially when it comes to things as banal as just food or your outlooks on wellness. I don't think that's productive. Yeah. I think condescending to people in videos when it comes to things like food and exercise is also not helping your case. It's not appealing to people. It's driving them away. The main thing that you should focus on is not just being a fanatic about one single thing when it comes to wellness. There may be things you truly want to devote your life to that are not outside of wellness, but is that you have a well-rounded life, and that community and friendship and family are truly some of the most important things you could ever focus on. I'd say up there with exercise and food, that those are being neglected far more than people will ever admit.
Facts. 100% agree. Thank you guys so much for doing this. We're going to make some chili. Might put a little seed oils in there. We'll see.
We will.
Oh, we will put some seed oils in there. We got it.
A whole bottle.
If I'm going to be here.
Yeah, he needs his daily dose of seed oils, guys. He hasn't had it yet.
We are all taking a seed oil shot.
Oh. We'll see. Chili, seed oil infused chili coming soon. And then we're going to go surf, get you guys in the ocean. It's going to be super fun. Waves are chill today. We got pro surfer Tanner Waite over there to guide you through it. So let's get after it, guys. Thank you so much. Leave your questions below and we'll try to get to some of them. Appreciate you guys. Like and subscribe. See you soon.